I think lust is a normal thing, and I think that people become Christians because they have lust, and sometimes they even have lust for the same sex, and then they go, I got to cover this up and get forgiveness because I was told it was wrong. And I'm wondering if you've ever had homosexual lust.
I don't know what this has to do with you facing Jesus on Judgment Day. If I make up my thinking, if I create something just to make my conscience feel better, is all irrelevant. The question is, as you stand before Jesus on Judgment Day, will he find you innocent or guilty?
I'll answer the same way. He would find me guilty in your imagined scenario.
Well, it's
but if I had you
if I'm
stand in front
imagining
of
it, the
Zeus,
question
you'd have
is
to say
if
the
it's
same thing.
true. But see, it's not. If I make up something, you're right. It doesn't exist. But it still begs the question: is this religion true? I might be making up a concept just to make myself feel better for my lusts, my thoughts, my whatever. But the question still remains, Troy, is Jesus who he claims to be? Will you face him on Judgment Day? Will you be innocent or guilty?
Well, I think that people should. Here's the thing. You can paint that, but most of this all happens from people who have this homosexual guilt. And if people could just get over that, they wouldn't need the whole Jesus stuff or
every Christian
Muhammad
is a latent
stuff.
homosexual?
What's that?
So you're stating every Christian is a latent homosexual?
I'm absolutely saying that every person on some level is probably a latent homosexual, and then they feel, if they're brought up to feel guilty enough about it, they run like crazy to Jesus, to the
well, let's just for yucks, let's leave sex or homosexuality or heterosexuality aside. You stand before Jesus, you've blasphemed his name, you've lied, you've stolen. I'm guessing you were naughty as a child. Fair enough?
Sure.
Okay. So will you be innocent or guilty on that day? Forget sexuality.
But right, okay. We'll forget the sexuality. Although I'm wondering why. All right. Here's the thing.
Because you seem to be tainted about it.
In your imaginary scenario, of course I would. You invented the game. It's like inventing a new game of football and then changing the rules and saying, "Oh, did you cross the line?" Well, yeah, you moved the line.
Well, no, I'm just following what the book says. So the book says you'd be guilty.
That book was invented by people. It was pulled out of somebody's rear.
Mm-hmm. And your proof for that is?
Because it's written in human handwriting.
Right.
That's my proof.
Isn't everything?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, so you're guilty before God. Troy, heaven or hell for you?
Hell burnt down, actually. I can tell you this from experience.
All right.
Hell burnt down. It was a while back, but there is a jerk section of heaven.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, Troy, you're good to go. You're comfortable with somebody made up the Bible. You're comfortable relying on, apparently every Christian is just making this up because they have latent homosexual tendencies. It's all a ruse. You're fine. Your conscience isn't screaming otherwise. You're good to go, and you're happy to carry on presenting the Comedy Jesus Show.
Well, yeah, at comedyjesusshow.com, but also the Quran and the Talmud, those are all invented too. I'm really not just making everything towards Christianity, although that is the prevalent religion that's taken over our government in this country, so I tend to focus on that quite a bit more.
Yeah, and it's safer.
Yeah, Comedy Muhammad didn't have a very long lifespan, but you know what? I'm glad that we have the tolerance we have, and I have to see death threats, but
think it did either.
Yeah, but you know exactly what I'm saying. It's Islam is not a tolerant religion at all, and so it is wonderful that we have a country where people can make jokes. And Christians tend to really enjoy my show, although some parts they're offended by. But I have a lot of Christians who write me and they go, you know what? I can see how people are offended, but I think you had a couple good points there, and it's one of those things. But
so
generally,
Troy, I know that you don't believe that Jesus even existed. Is that correct?
Well, me personally, I joke about that. But I think he did, and I'd like to invent that he did exist and that he was this amazing person that we should look up to and strive to be like in a lot of ways, except for that whole thing about, killing people who are your enemies.
Okay, so everybody just made it up just for some nasty motive we don't quite understand.
No, not a nasty motive. Not a nasty motive. It's just, just like any mythology gets made up and invented and written by people, I don't think there was a bad motive at all. If probably was any motive, it was a good one.
Mm-hmm. Well, what was good about it?
Well, people wanted to have a civil society, and I think at some point back then we needed that. We needed religion. It's like medication, but it's time for people to get off their medication and start waking up to the fact that there's more. And I think Jesus would come back and he'd say, "Yeah, you guys, what happened? You're supposed to have moved on."
Troy, so let me ask you: you've spent a lot of hours writing this, trying to get it staged and presented. That's a lot of effort gone into tearing down Christianity or Jesus Christ. How come? What's the problem?
I don't know that it's so much to tear down. I don't know. You might have to see the show, but it's definitely tearing down the things that we think that we hold sacred that Jesus probably wouldn't have approved of. Mm-hmm. And so Jesus, remember, you would say the same thing about Jesus. He tore down the establishment.
So you don't believe in him. Why are you trying to do this? Are you trying to help us ignorant Christians?
I do. I just told you. I made up a great idea of Jesus, and I like to follow that. I think he was an amazing moral person. But I don't think, obviously, I mean, he's not God.
How do you know he was an amazing moral person, Troy?
Because I made that up.
Oh, so you believe in so you've made up a God to suit yourself?
Just like you and everybody, of course. That's what we do.
Okay. Well, just so you know, the Bible says your Jesus is an idol. It doesn't exist. It's fantasy, for sure. Clear? Are we at least okay with that?
Well, yeah, but the made-up Bible says that my made-up guy is not as good as your made-up guy.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, Troy?
Yes?
Thanks for the chat. Appreciate it very much. Very interesting to discover that we are all latent homosexuals. I appreciate the phone call, sir.
All of humanity. Todd, thank you for having me on, though, seriously.
Goodbye,
it was a good
Troy.
discussion.
Thank you very much.
And ignoramuses.
The Comedy Jesus Show. You did see what you learned today at We're the Master Radio? You didn't know that about yourself. So sad. This is We're the Master Radio.